We now move to section 5 of the book, Revisiting the History of Palestine. This section starts with the British Mandate. The year is 1917. The Ottoman Empire is collapsing under the weight of war. British forces moved across the Middle East, promising freedom to Arabs who rebelled against the Ottoman rule. But in London, something else was happening. A promise was being drafted, not to the people of the land, not to the Arabs, but a political movement growing in Europe. The Balfour Declaration. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. A single sentence, 67 words long, reshaped the future of millions. It was made without consulting the Palestinians, who made up more than 90% of the population. It was a colonial gesture, powerful people rewarding distant lands. When Britain took administrative control of Palestine in 1920, it presented itself as a neutral caretaker. But the structure of the mandate told another story. Zionist political institutions were legally recognized. Jewish immigration was facilitated and protected. Palestinian political parties were restricted, monitored, or dissolved. Britain was not a mediator. It was the architect of all the disasters that happened. Within 2 decades, large tracts of land were transferred to Zionist agencies. Thousands of people, Palestinians, tenant farmers, were evicted. Immigration flowed steadily into the country. Yet, Palestinians were told they must remain quiet, patient and orderly, as their land was taken piece by piece. The people protested. They petitioned. They appealed to London, to the League of Nations, to anyone who would listen. But the British dismissed them as unfit for self-governance, a familiar colonial refrain. By the 1930s, the stage was set for revolt. In 1936, after years of land loss, economic pressure, and political exclusion, Palestine erupted. The revolt of 1936 until 1939. A nationwide uprising, strikes, protests, resistance shook the British rule. It was the first large-scale anti-colonial rebellion in the Arab world. Britain responded with overwhelming force. Homes blown up, villages besieged, leaders exiled, thousands imprisoned. The revolt was crushed, but its memory became a foundation for later generations. Then came World War II. During the war, They become stronger, better armed, and more organized with the help of the British before. They were trained, fully armed, while the Palestinians were forbidden from carrying even the simple means of self-defense. Some Jewish militias were even trained by British forces. Others, like the Irgun, carried out attacks against both British and Arab targets. Palestinians remained defenseless, politically fragmented, and economically strained. The imbalance of power was widening, a storm gathering over the horizon. Then came the UN Partition Plan of 1947. When Britain tired of the Palestinian question, it handed the issue to the newly formed United Nations. The proposed solution shocked the Arab world. Jews who owned less than 7% of the land were allocated over 55% of Palestine. Palestinians, the overwhelming majority, were pushed into the fragmented enclaves, and Jerusalem was placed under international control. The UN plan ignored demographics, ignored the tradition and geography. It rewarded recent colonial engineering. It set the stage for conflict. Palestinian leaders rejected the plan. Zionist leaders accepted it, not as an end, but as a beginning. Even before British withdrawal, militias began operations to secure territory. The land was now moving toward its most definite tragedy. The tragedy, the Nakba, when a nation was torn apart. In Arabic, Nakba means catastrophe. It is not a single event, but an experience carried by families, villages, and generations. By the way, the population of Palestine, as compiled from Ottoman census data, from McCarthy of Oxford, British Mandate reports, UN archive, and major demographics, show that while the Muslims in 1850 were 87% of the population, the Jews were 3% and 10% were Christians. Thus, Arabs were 97% of the population. Those were completely ignored by the Balfour Declaration, by the UN Partition Plan, and every other resolution. In 1917, with the start of the World War, Muslims and Christians were 95%. The Jews became 5%. But because of the mandate and the facilitation of immigration for the Jews in 1948, the time of Nakba, the Muslims and Christians were 75%, while the Jews were roughly around 30% of the population. So they were not original Palestinians. They were immigrants from different parts of Europe. As British troops departed, Zionist militias launched coordinated operations that destroyed Deir Yassin and produced the Deir Yassin massacre, which people still remember. Led death march, Haifa and Jaffa emptied, entire districts depopulated. Villages were surrounded, roads were blocked, residents were expelled or fled in terror. By the end of the 1948 war, over 750,000 Palestinians were refugees. More than 400 villages were destroyed, bulldozed, renamed. Historic cities were emptied of their native people. Families left with only what they could carry. Some walked for days under fire, others never reached safety. The Nakba was not accidental, it was systematic disposition. Where did the refugees go? They dispersed across Gaza, West Bank, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Egypt, Cyprus, and far beyond. Entire communities erased from maps now survived only in memory, preserved in stories, songs, keys to the homes that no longer stood. Israel was created. Palestine was shattered, but something endured. The names of lost villages still remembered. The deeds kept in tin boxes. The old olive trees still rooted in ancient soil. The Nakba did not end in 1948. The consequences continue today in refugee camps, in diaspora, in the underlying struggle for return.